Hi, good to see you again. Still German POWs in America. Today isn't about a battle. It's about a scarf, pulled tight at minus 34 degrees Celsius, and 1 second of contact that meant two completely different things. At minus 34 degrees Celsius, the cold isn't a mood. It's a rule. It doesn't care who you were, what uniform you wore, what side you're on now. It goes straight for what's exposed, what's damp, what's ignored for even a minute. So before we step into this story, let me ask you something simple. At minus 34 degrees Celsius, what freezes first on a human body? Now picture a night line, men standing shoulder to shoulder outside a camp fence in the mountains. No music, no dramatic spotlight, just wind pushing through pine and timber, and that thin, dry sound boots make on frozen ground. Their breath doesn't float. It snaps into white and disappears. Nobody wants to move too much because movement makes sweat, and sweat is the fastest way to turn cold into injury. He is one of them. A German prisoner, early 20s, cheeks raw, eyes narrowed because the wind feels like sand. He has a scarf, but it isn't a proper scarf. It's a strip of cloth he's wrapped and unwrapped so many times it's lost its softness. He's used it to cover his mouth, not his neck. When he exhales, the cloth catches moisture. When he inhales, the fabric stiffens and rubs his lip like paper. The line doesn't talk. Talking wastes heat. Talking draws attention. The only sounds are counting, distant doors, and the steady pacing of a guard somewhere nearby. The Americans have their own way of doing things. Even the silence feels organized. Somewhere down the line, a man coughs once, then swallows it, like noise itself is dangerous. He can't see faces well. Darkness flattens people into shapes, shoulders, hats, the outline of a rifle slung low. He watches the fence posts because it gives his eyes something stable. He watches his own boots because it gives his mind something small to control. Then, a shadow breaks from the side of the line and comes toward him. At first, he thinks it's just another pass, another look, another check, another reminder that he belongs to the camp now. The shadow stops too close. Close enough for him to smell tobacco and wool. Close enough to feel the presence of another body cutting the wind. A hand comes up, quick and sure, and grabs the loose end of his scarf. In the dark, he can't read the intention. He only feels the pull. The cloth slides against his jaw. The hand is near his throat. Not gentle, not violent. Fast, functional, like someone tightening a strap. His body reacts before his mind finishes the thought. His shoulders lift. His breath catches. For a second, he's not in Colorado anymore. He's back in the training yard, back in the lectures, back in the stories that taught him what to expect from an enemy up close. And that's the moment this episode lives in. A single touch, in a place where nobody wants to be touched, in a temperature where exposed skin can turn from pain to numbness without warning. So I want to ask you something, honestly. If someone's hand is at your throat in the dark, do you think first about help or harm? Because he thinks harm. He thinks punishment. He thinks the worst thing you can think when you don't know the rules and you don't have the power yet. His breathing stops, not because of the cold, but because of what he thinks that touch means. Okay, freeze that moment right there. His lungs lock up, his throat goes tight, and for 1 second, he's not thinking about weather or hunger or the line. He's thinking about meaning. About what a hand at your neck is allowed to mean in a war. And before we go any further, you need to understand the place that makes a second like that feel like the end of the world. Camp Hale sits high, built for mountain training. In winter, the cold isn't dramatic, it's practical. It gets into seams, collars, and the smallest strip of exposed skin. The German prisoner stands in line and learns fast. Sweat is a problem. And stillness is a problem too. The air up there feels thin in a way you can't explain to someone who hasn't tried to breathe it while standing still. You inhale, and it doesn't feel like it fills you. It feels like it passes through you, like your chest is a room with a cracked window. Every breath has an edge. And the wind, this isn't the kind of wind that pushes leaves around. It comes down off the slopes like it has a job. It finds the gaps you didn't know you had, under the collar, between glove and sleeve, at the point where scarf meets skin. The line moves in short bursts. Stand, wait, 2 steps, stop again. It's not marching like a parade. It's the slow, controlled movement of people who don't want to waste heat. Their boots squeak on packed snow and frozen gravel. That sound becomes its own clock. Somewhere, a board creaks. Somewhere else, metal taps metal. The kind of clean, cold click that tells you someone's equipment is stiffening. He can feel his own clothing changing as the minutes pass. Wool goes from soft to rigid. Fabric near his mouth becomes damp, then turns hard. When he swallows, it hurts, because the air has dried everything out. His lips crack when he tries to wet them. His eyelashes feel heavy, like they've collected dust, except it's ice. Even blinking feels loud. And the cold logic is simple. It doesn't target courage, it targets exposure. A single strip of skin at the neck can cost you more than a day of hunger. The body is warm inside, so it fights to protect that warmth. Blood pulls back from the edges. Fingers lose feeling first. Nose, ears, cheeks. Then the places you forget because you can't see them. The back of the neck, the hollow under the jawline, the thin skin just above the collar. The moment the skin is exposed to wind like this, it feels like it's burning. Not cold burning, real burning. Like someone pressed a hot coin against you. That's the part people misunderstand. The danger doesn't start as numbness. It starts as pain that feels sharp enough to be alive. Then, if you're unlucky or stubborn, the pain drops away, and that's when the real problem begins. He's learned to fear sweat more than snow. It sounds backwards, but it's the truth. Sweat means moisture. Moisture means your clothes become a trap. You move too much, you sweat. You stand too still, the wind eats whatever heat you have. So he keeps his shoulders tight and his motions small. He tries to breathe through fabric so the air warms before it hits his throat. He tries not to cough because coughing shakes the chest and costs heat. He tries not to look scared because looking scared in a place like this makes you feel even smaller. That's the other part of the setting people miss. It isn't only the cold, it's the structure around the cold. The fence, the lights, the count, the fact that men with rifles control the rhythm of your body, when you stand, when you move, when you speak, when you're allowed to go inside. Even if a guard never strikes you, that control sits on your shoulders like extra weight. It teaches your mind to search for danger in neutral things. A step behind you, a pause, a voice from the dark, a hand reaching where it shouldn't. He doesn't know the American rules the way the Americans know them. He knows rumors. He knows what older prisoners whisper at night when the barracks are quiet, and men try to act like they're not listening. Don't talk back. Don't move suddenly. Don't give them a reason to say you resisted. Don't be the one who makes the guard's job harder, because the guard can always make your life harder back. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But the mind doesn't wait for proof when it's cold and cornered. It runs on worst-case instincts because worst case is what kept you alive back home. So when the line is silent, it isn't peaceful silence, it's controlled silence. It's silence built from calculation. Everyone is managing something. Their breath, their pride, their fear of being misunderstood. He watches his own hands and thinks about how easily a small movement could look like something else in the dark. He thinks about how quickly a misunderstanding becomes an accusation. He thinks about how the Americans don't have to be cruel for him to be afraid, because fear doesn't require cruelty. Fear only requires imbalance. His scarf is part of that imbalance. It's too thin. It sits wrong. It does the job on his mouth but neglects his neck. And now the wind has found that thin strip of skin at his throat. He didn't notice it earlier because the body lies at first. It tells you you're fine, so you keep functioning. Then it sends pain like a signal flare. He feels it now. Raw, exposed, burning under the jaw. He adjusts the cloth once, fast, like a guilty habit, but it slips back. The fabric is stiff. His fingers are clumsy. He can't feel the knot properly. And this is where fear does its quiet work. Fear makes a simple movement, someone stepping close, feel like an attack. Fear turns a practical correction into a threat. Fear fills in intentions when you can't see faces. And in a place like Camp Hale, on a night like this, you rarely see faces. You see silhouettes and breath and the outline of a coat. Why does exposed skin feel like it's burning before it goes numb? Because pain is your body's early warning system, and when the warning stops, the damage may already be starting. And what do you think fear does to someone's interpretation of a simple movement? It makes the mind write a story faster than the truth can arrive. That's the point. That's why this moment matters. Because when that hand comes up in the dark, it isn't only cloth and skin. It's everything he's been taught to expect. It's every rumor he's carried. It's the fact that he can't read the face behind the hand. He doesn't see the guard's face, only a shape moving toward him. So when that shape closes the last few steps, it isn't just a guard doing his rounds. In his head, it becomes a test. How fast can danger arrive when you can't even see a face? His scarf is still sitting wrong. The cloth is stiff from breath and frost, and the knot he tied earlier has slipped. A thin strip of skin at the side of his neck is exposed, just enough for the wind to bite it. He feels that sharp burn again under the jaw, the kind that makes you flinch without moving. He tries to tuck his chin down, tries to hide the skin with posture, but posture doesn't seal a gap. The wind still gets in. The American soldier steps in close. He doesn't ask permission. He reaches for the scarf and pulls it tight, fast, functional. His knuckles brush near the prisoner's throat. Cloth slides. Skin disappears under fabric. For 1 second, the prisoner's whole body locks. It happens in pieces, like frames you can't unsee once they've played. First, the sound. Wool scraping against wool. A dry, rough sound because everything is cold and everything is stiff. The scarf doesn't move like fabric anymore. It moves like cardboard. Second, the pull. Not a yank meant to hurt, a quick tug that takes slack out of the cloth. The scarf tightens along the jawline and down the neck, pressing the skin just enough to make the throat feel suddenly exposed, even as it's being covered. Third, contact. Knuckles or fingertips, hard to tell which, brush the side of the neck, that place where the pulse sits, that place no stranger is supposed to touch. The skin there is already half numb from the wind, but the touch still registers, sharp and electric, because the body is watching for threat. The body always watches for threat when you're trapped. Fourth, the collar. The soldier's hand dips lower, tucking the scarf under the prisoner's coat collar, sealing it. The fabric slides under the edge of the coat with a small, final scrape. It's clean and quick. It's the kind of movement a man makes when he's done it 1,000 times to himself. And then the prisoner feels the weirdest part of all. Warmth arriving late, like an insult. Because the moment the skin is covered, the wind stops biting that strip of neck. The burn eases. The body should relax. But it doesn't, because the body and the mind are arguing about what just happened. The prisoner's shoulders are up around his ears. His hands are half clenched inside his sleeves. His jaw is tight, not from cold, but from holding back a reaction he doesn't even understand. His lungs stop working the way they were a second ago. He tries to inhale, and the air catches, shallow. He tries again, and it's wrong again. It feels like the scarf is too tight, even though it isn't. It feels like the hand is still there, even though it's already gone. He wants to step back. He doesn't. Stepping back could look like refusal. He wants to turn his head to see the soldier's face. He doesn't. Turning could look like defiance. In the dark, small movements become statements, and statements become consequences. So he freezes. perfectly still, because stillness is the one thing he's sure won't be misread. That's the part people who haven't been powerless don't always get. The shock isn't a scarf got pulled. The shock is the distance collapsing. A man with authority stepping into the space you still think of as yours. A hand coming to your throat without warning. The body can't tell the difference at first between a practical correction and a threat. It just reacts to the violation of that boundary. And the reaction is immediate. His stomach drops, his pulse jumps. The hair at the back of his neck tries to stand up, but the cold has already flattened it. He tastes metal in his mouth. His ears ring. Not loud, just that thin, high sound you get when adrenaline hits fast. He can hear his own breath too clearly now, like it's the only sound in the world. The soldier is so close, the prisoner can smell him. Tobacco, yes, but also something else. Canvas, soap, cold air trapped in wool. The smell doesn't match the fear. The fear expects spit, sweat, something ugly. The smell is ordinary, almost domestic, and that mismatch makes the fear worse, not better, because it confuses the brain. Confusion is fuel. The soldier finishes the tuck. The scarf sits tight now, properly sealed under the collar. The exposed strip of neck is gone. In purely practical terms, the problem is solved. But the prisoner's mind has already sprinted ahead. His mind fills in an intention the way it's been trained to. The enemy touches you. The enemy humiliates you. The enemy hurts you. That's how the story was told. That's how you were kept obedient and angry. And in the dark, with no face to read and no words yet to anchor the moment, the mind doesn't wait. It chooses the worst interpretation, because the worst interpretation feels safer than being surprised. Have you noticed how the body reacts before the mind can think? The body doesn't ask, "Is this help?" It asks, "Am I in danger?" And if you can't see someone's intention, what does your brain fill in? It fills in the story it already knows, not the truth, the story. The prisoner's throat works. He tries to swallow, and it's dry. He tries to draw a deeper breath, and it comes out wrong, shallow, and sharp. The scarf isn't choking him. The cold isn't choking him. His own mind is. He can't breathe right, not because the scarf is tight, but because his mind goes to the worst place. And the cruel part is that nothing violent has happened. Not yet. The scarf is just cloth. The hand is already moving away. If you filmed the scene from a distance, it might look almost boring. One man fixing another man's clothing in the cold. But war does something to meaning. It rewires it. It takes ordinary contact, an arm guiding you, a hand adjusting fabric, and stains it with everything people have heard, feared, and been taught to expect. In the dark, touch becomes a threat. Not because of what the hand does, but because of what the prisoner was taught a hand could do. He doesn't scream. He doesn't fight. He goes still, because stillness is what fear chooses when it doesn't know the rules. His mind is already building a story faster than reality can catch up. It starts with training, not memory. He can't even point to a single moment that taught him this. It's more like a layer that has been painted over his instincts for years. The enemy is careless with you. The enemy enjoys power. The enemy takes what it wants. The enemy humiliates. If you end up in their hands, you become an object. That's the seed. It doesn't need proof in the moment. It only needs darkness and uncertainty. And Camp Hale gives him plenty of uncertainty. He doesn't know what counts as resistance here. He doesn't know which movements get written down and which ones get ignored. He doesn't know if a guard will laugh at him for flinching or punish him for it. He doesn't know if anyone will even believe his version of events if something goes wrong. That's the real imbalance in a camp. Not just weapons and fences, but interpretation. Whoever holds authority also holds the story of what happened. His throat is dry now, painfully dry. He tries to breathe through his nose, and his nostrils sting like they've been scraped. He tries to swallow, and it feels like swallowing sand. His heart beats too loud in his chest. It's not romantic or dramatic. It's messy and humiliating. His body is doing this without asking him. He can feel the scarf pressing against his neck, secure, warm even. But his brain treats that pressure like a grip. The mind is bad at nuance when it's afraid. It translates tight into trapped. It translates close into danger. And because he cannot see the guard's face, he cannot read intention in eyes or expression. He has nothing to anchor the moment except sensation. And sensation, under stress, lies. He thinks about the word no and realizes he doesn't know if he's allowed to say it. That realization is its own kind of cold. In his own army, in his own life before capture, he learned what no cost. He learned that refusing a superior was not a debate, it was a sentence. Even now, in an American camp, his body expects the same logic. Disobedience equals punishment. Sudden movement equals punishment. A raised voice equals punishment. He has no proof the Americans will respond like that, but fear doesn't require proof. It only requires that you feel trapped. So he stays still. Stillness becomes his shield, even though it feels like surrender. The guard shifts slightly. The prisoner hears fabric move. He hears a breath that is not his own. He feels the space compress again, that invisible circle people keep around their bodies, collapsing. His shoulders tighten more, like he can shrink away without moving. His eyes fix on nothing. He stares at a spot on the ground, because looking up feels like an invitation to something he doesn't want. He tries to remind himself of the facts. The hand was quick, not lingering. The scarf is covering exposed skin. He is not being struck. He is not being dragged. Those are facts. But his mind answers with other facts, the ones he carried into captivity. A guard doesn't touch your throat for your benefit. A guard touches your throat to show you who owns you. A guard touches your throat because he can. That's propaganda at work. Not a poster on a wall. Propaganda inside your reflexes. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It speaks in the same voice as survival instinct. The prisoner's breath comes in short pulls now. He can't fill his lungs. It's like the chest is stuck halfway open. His fingers tingle inside his sleeves. His jaw aches from clenching. His ears pick up every tiny sound and treat it like a signal. A step, a metal click, the scrape of glove on fabric. The world narrows to a few feet of darkness and one person standing too close. He thinks, if I move, they can say I attacked. He thinks, if I speak, they can say I threatened. He thinks, if I do nothing, at least I can't be blamed for making it worse. That's the trap. In a place where you don't control the rules, you start living inside other people's interpretations. And then the guard's voice comes, low and plain, close enough that the prisoner feels it more than hears it. Hold still. 2 words. Not shouted, not cruel, not even angry. But in that moment, they hit like a command from every life he's ever lived. They don't calm him, they spike him. Because hold still could mean anything when you're afraid. It could mean don't fight. It could mean this is about to get worse. It could mean you have no choice. He obeys instantly because obedience has been hammered into him deeper than thought. His body goes rigid. His throat tightens again. He tries to keep his breathing quiet because loud breathing feels like weakness, and weakness feels like invitation. The scarf is warm now. The wind can't reach the skin. His neck is safer than it was 30 seconds ago. But his mind is louder than the wind. Why do people freeze instead of resist? Because freezing feels like the last form of control left. Control over your own movement, your own provocation, your own blame. And if propaganda lives in your head long enough, does it become your first instinct? It does. It becomes the story your mind tells before it even checks the evidence. Here's another question, and be honest with yourself. If you were raised on one story about your enemy for years, how many seconds of darkness would it take for that story to take over? 1? 2? Would you wait for facts, or would you react to fear? The guard shifts again. The prisoner feels the hand return briefly, not grabbing, not squeezing, just finishing the tuck under the collar, sealing the last gap like someone closing a window. The prisoner can't tell that yet. He only knows there is a hand near his throat again, and his mind is still in the worst place. And then the soldier leans in and says 2 words that don't sound like cruelty at all. Those 2 words arrive right when his fear is at its peak, right when his mind has already decided what kind of moment this is going to be. There's a brief silence first, not a comforting silence, the kind that hangs because he's waiting for the next thing. His body is still locked, his shoulders are still up, his breath is still shallow. He can hear his own heartbeat louder than the wind, and that's humiliating because no one else should be able to hear you panic. The soldier finishes tucking the scarf under the collar like he's sealing a gap. He does it with the same patience you use when you're closing a door against weather. One edge under, then the other. Then a final press to make sure the cloth sits flat. The glove scrapes lightly against wool. Nothing theatrical, nothing personal, just problem solving. Then the soldier leans in close enough for the prisoner to catch the warmth of breath for half a second, proof that this is a living person, not a silhouette. And he says it, flat and practical. Skin freezes first. No insult, no joke, no extra explanation. Just a fact, delivered the way men talk when the cold doesn't allow speeches. He taps his own neck once with 2 fingers, right where the wind had been biting. Not dramatic, more like a mechanic pointing at a bolt, like he's saying, "This is the weak spot, cover it." His hand doesn't linger. He doesn't look around to see who's watching. He doesn't wait for gratitude. He doesn't even wait for understanding. He's already stepping back. That's the part that lands hardest, because if this was about power, he would stay close. He would hold the moment. He would let the prisoner feel small. He would make sure the prisoner knew who was in charge. That's how power usually behaves when it wants to be felt. But the soldier doesn't do that. He creates distance again immediately, like he's returning something that doesn't belong to him. The scarf is fixed. The skin is covered. The job is done. He turns his head down the line, scanning for the next weak spot. Someone with ears exposed. Someone with gloves too thin. Someone whose collar is open like a wound. He walks away like he just tightened a strap on a piece of equipment. And the prisoner stands there, not moving, because he's still catching up to what just happened. The scarf is tight now, properly tight. The wind can't reach the strip of skin on his neck anymore. That burn eases. It doesn't vanish instantly, but it stops growing. He can feel a tiny pocket of warmth building under the cloth, the way heat returns to a place that's been insulted by cold. His body should relax, but it doesn't. Not right away. Because the nervous system doesn't take orders from logic. It takes time. He's still flooded with adrenaline. His hands are still clenched. His throat is still dry. He inhales, and the breath comes in like it's been rationed. He exhales, and the air shakes a little on the way out. He hates that. He hates how visible fear feels inside your own skin. And then something else creeps in behind the relief. Not gratitude, not yet. Embarrassment. It arrives quietly, like a bruise you notice only after the impact is over. He realizes what his mind did in the dark, how fast it turned a practical touch into a threat, how quickly it chose the ugliest interpretation because that's what he had been trained to expect. He doesn't like seeing that part of himself. It feels childish, but it's not. It's something deeper than choice. He thinks about the guard's voice. No anger, no contempt, just a sentence that belongs to weather, not war. Skin freezes first. That's what makes it so sharp. The soldier didn't correct him morally. He corrected him physically. He treated him like a body that could get hurt, not an enemy that deserves it. And he did it without trying to earn a reaction. The prisoner tries another breath, deeper this time. It still isn't smooth, but it's possible. His shoulders drop a fraction, his jaw unclenches. He feels the urge to look up, really look up, maybe catch a face, maybe find evidence of cruelty that matches the fear. But the soldier is already gone. Just another shape moving down the line, doing the same small, practical thing for someone else. And that absence, him walking away, tells the truth more than any speech could. What hits harder, an apology or a simple fact said at the right moment? Sometimes it's the fact, because it doesn't ask you to forgive. It just forces you to relabel what you thought you saw. And why does him walking away matter as much as the scarf itself? Because walking away is restraint. Walking away is proof that the moment wasn't taken for pleasure or power. It was used for one purpose and then released. The prisoner stays still a second longer, not out of obedience now, but out of processing. He can feel warmth returning under the fabric. He can also feel something sour in his stomach that has nothing to do with hunger. Because his body doesn't calm down immediately. Relief comes late, after shame already arrives. Relief comes late, after shame already arrives. And the worst part about shame is that it doesn't care where you are. It follows you back inside. The line breaks, eventually. A command goes out, boots shift, and the prisoners move as a group toward warmth like animals that have learned the shape of shelter. The walk back to the barracks is short, but at minus 34 degrees Celsius short still costs you something. Snow squeaks underfoot. The wind hits from the side and tries to peel the scarf back off his neck. He keeps it tucked now, almost obsessively. He doesn't want that strip of skin exposed again, not because of the cold alone, but because he doesn't want to feel that panic again. He doesn't want to give his mind another chance to lie to him. Inside, the air is different. Still cold, but not violent. It smells like damp wool and old wood and the faint sourness of too many bodies drying off at once. Boots thump the floor. Someone shakes snow from a coat. Metal bunk frames creak. A stove sits in the corner like the only honest thing in the room. It pops and ticks as it warms, the sound of expanding iron. The heat isn't immediate. It never is. First, you feel nothing. Then you feel too much. He sits down on his bunk because his legs suddenly remember they're tired. He unlaces one boot with fingers that don't quite obey yet. The leather is stiff. The laces feel like wire. When he pulls, his knuckles ache. He sets the boot down and watches his hands for a second, like he's checking whether they're still his. That's when his body finally lets go. Not all at once. It releases in stages, like a spring uncoiling. His shoulders drop. His jaw unclenches. He takes one deep breath that actually fills his lungs, and it hurts, like cold air and warm air are fighting inside him. His heart slows a fraction, then speeds up again, confused. Adrenaline doesn't leave politely. It lingers. It argues. It keeps replaying the moment that caused it, trying to justify itself. Later, when the wind isn't in his ears anymore, he feels it. Not gratitude first, embarrassment. He replayed a hand trying to prevent frostbite and turned it into a threat. His eyes burn. Not from cold now, from realizing how quickly fear can lie. He can't stop seeing it. The movement comes back in perfect detail. The glove, the tug, the brush near the throat, the two words. He hears "hold still" again and feels his stomach drop again as if it's happening now. Then he hears "skin freezes first," and the whole thing flips. And the flip is what makes him sick. Because it means the danger he felt didn't come from the soldier's intention. It came from inside him. He presses his palms against his thighs, hard, like pressure can anchor him in the present. The wool of his trousers is rough and damp. Everything is damp. Coats hang over bunks, steaming faintly, the room filled with that smell of wet fabric that never truly dries in winter. Someone nearby is rubbing their hands together, not talking, just trying to bring fingers back to life. Another man is coughing into his sleeve. The stove pops again. The room feels ordinary, almost boring. And that ordinariness is what breaks him further. Because the moment outside felt like a cliff, and now he's inside, surrounded by bunks and boots and small human noises, and he realizes the cliff was partly imagined. Not all imagined. The camp is real, the fence is real, the imbalance is real. But the specific terror in that second was something he built, something he supplied. Like he carried a flare inside his own chest and lit it the second a hand came near his neck. He hates that thought. He's been taught to hate weakness. He's been taught to hate hesitation. He's been taught that fear is something you defeat by being harder, louder, more certain. But what he felt out there wasn't cowardice. It was reflex. It was a trained reflex. That's what makes it humiliating. It wasn't even a decision he could defend. It was a story that lived in him without asking permission. He tries to reframe it, the way men do when they can't stand the truth as it is. I was right to be cautious. Any prisoner would be cautious. You don't know what they might do. Those thoughts come easily. They are comforting because they protect his pride. But the next thought comes too, and it's sharper. He walked away. If the soldier wanted to harm him, there were 100 ways to do it in that dark. If the soldier wanted to humiliate him, he could have lingered. He could have waited for a flinch, waited for panic, waited for the prisoner to beg. He didn't. He fixed the scarf and moved on. The truth sits there like a stone. The soldier behaved like a man who didn't need to prove anything. And that makes the prisoner's earlier fear feel exposed. He lies back on the bunk, staring at the underside of the bed above him, where scratches and old initials are carved into the wood. He reads them without reading them. His throat feels tight again, but not from cold, from emotion he doesn't want. Emotion he doesn't have a name for that won't embarrass him further. The worst part is that the fear wasn't only about the soldier. It was about his own helplessness. The simple fact that he couldn't stop the hand from entering his space. The simple fact that he didn't get to decide. Even when the hand was helpful, it still reminded him he has no control. That's a hard thing for a grown man to accept. It turns every small contact into a reminder. You are here because someone else put you here. So why does his mind reach for the worst interpretation? Because the worst interpretation gives him a kind of control back. If the other man is evil, then the world makes sense. If the other man is cruel, then fear is rational and pride stays intact. But if the other man is simply practical, restrained, even decent in a small way, then the prisoner has to face a more complicated truth. A truth that threatens his identity more than the cold ever could. He sits up again. The room is louder now, not loud in volume, but in human presence. Men are moving, settling, unwrapping cloth from faces. A few are speaking in low voices, trading small complaints, the way people do when they're trying to prove they're fine. He touches the scarf at his neck. It's still tight, properly tucked. He feels warmth there now. He should feel grateful. But gratitude isn't what comes first. What comes first is shame. Shame that he assumed. Shame that he was ready to believe the worst without evidence. Shame that he has been carrying propaganda like a set of instructions inside his own nervous system. He thinks of home. Not home as a place, but home as a voice. The voice that told him what Americans are, what enemies do, what captivity means. That voice has been loud for years. It has been reliable in one way. It kept him certain. Certainty feels like strength. Certainty feels like armor. And now, 2 words, skin freezes first, have put a crack in that armor. Because those words didn't come from a villain. They came from a man thinking about frostbite. He rubs his eyes with the heel of his palm, harder than he needs to, like he can erase the feeling. It doesn't erase it. It just makes his eyes water more, and then he's angry at himself for that, too. A man on the next bunk over notices, not in a kind way, in a wary way, like kindness is dangerous here. "What's wrong with you?" the man mutters. His tone is quiet, but sharp. The prisoner keeps his eyes down. "Nothing." The other man snorts. "You look like you saw a ghost." He hesitates. This is the moment where pride and truth meet. He could lie. He could make it about the cold. He could keep the story clean. Instead, he says it in the simplest way possible. "A guard fixed my scarf." The other man's face tightens, suspicious. "Fixed it?" The prisoner nods once. "So my neck wouldn't freeze." There's a pause, the kind of pause that shows you what someone wants to believe. The other man shakes his head like he's shaking off an insult. "Don't be stupid," he says. "They do things like that to soften you." The prisoner doesn't answer. He doesn't have the energy to argue. He just looks at the stove, at the small flicker behind the iron door, and feels how tired he is. Not in his muscles, but in his mind. Because this is what happens when fear has nowhere to go. It turns inward. It looks for a target, and the easiest target is yourself. Have you ever been ashamed of your first thought? Not the thought you chose, but the one that arrived before you could stop it. The one that revealed what lives inside you when the lights go out. And if someone with power chooses restraint, does it force you to face your own beliefs? It does, because restraint removes your excuse. It leaves you with one question. If they didn't mean harm, why did I see harm so quickly? He doesn't forget the touch. He won't. But the meaning of the touch changes, and that's what breaks him. That's the moment the episode could end, on shame, on silence, on a man staring at a stove and realizing his own mind betrayed him faster than any enemy ever could. But moral awakenings don't arrive like lightning. They arrive like a slow thaw. They start small. They start with one detail you can't unsee. Here's the part people miss. In war, not every touch is taking. Some touches are just keeping you alive. And that difference, small as it looks, can ruin a lifetime of propaganda. Because propaganda is built on clean categories. Enemy, threat, monster. It needs the other side to be simple so your own side can feel pure. It doesn't leave room for a soldier who fixes a scarf and walks away. It doesn't leave room for restraint. Restraint is dangerous to propaganda because it proves that power can exist without cruelty. And that's what happened in the dark. The next morning comes the same way mornings always come in camps. Not with sunrise, but with routine. A sound at the door, a barked order, boots on wood. Men swinging legs off bunks, rubbing their faces, trying to pull themselves into the day like it's a heavy coat. The prisoner stands and reaches for his scarf before he reaches for anything else. That's new. Yesterday the scarf was an afterthought, a scrap of cloth he used to cover his mouth. Today it's the first thing he checks. He wraps it higher. He tucks it down with care. He seals the collar the way the soldier did. Edge under, press flat, no gaps. Not because he's trying to imitate an American. Not because he's trying to be grateful. Because he learned a practical truth the hard way. Skin freezes first, and pride doesn't protect you from weather. He steps outside again with the others. The air hits him like it always does, and he feels that old instinct try to rise. Tightness in the chest, suspicion, the need to read danger in every shadow. But something is different now. Not weaker, different. He watches the guards with a new kind of attention. Not the attention of a hunted animal scanning for teeth. The attention of someone trying to separate reality from story. He notices things he didn't notice before because fear was too loud. He notices how the guards keep their distance unless they have a reason not to. He notices how they correct problems quickly and move on, like they're trying to keep the day running rather than trying to break men. He notices how they speak in short sentences that sound like work, not theater. He notices that cruelty, if it exists, isn't constant. It isn't built into every breath the way propaganda promised it would be. And he also notices something uncomfortable. He has been living as if every interaction is a trap, which means he has been interpreting every neutral act as an attack. That interpretation has been costing him energy, day after day, like a leak he never fixed because he didn't believe fixing was possible. During roll call, he feels the wind try to pry at his scarf again. He presses it down with his own hand, not someone else's. The gesture is small, but it matters to him. It's control, returned in a practical form. He doesn't need to prove anything. He just needs to keep his skin covered. Later, inside, the man from the bunk over is still grumbling the way bitter men grumble, still turning every decent act into a trick. "They want you soft," he says again, when someone mentions the guard handing out extra gloves to a man whose fingers were turning pale. The prisoner doesn't argue, not out loud. He's learned that arguing in a camp isn't about truth, it's about status. And status isn't what he's trying to win right now. He just says, quietly, "Or they don't want frostbite paperwork." The other man stares at him like that's an insult to the world. "You're naive." Maybe he is. Or maybe naive is just what cynics call reality, when reality doesn't support their anger. The prisoner turns away and focuses on the real things: the stove, the damp clothes, the rhythm of the day. He realizes how much he's been living inside imagined futures, inside threats that might happen, inside meanings assigned before facts arrive. He realizes something else, too, and it's harder to admit. Fear has been a kind of pride for him. Fear told him he was still loyal, still tough, still unbroken. Fear told him he hadn't been fooled. But now he has a new problem, a better problem, a problem that requires thought instead of reflex. How do you live after you've seen your enemy behave normally? Not kindly in a cinematic, heroic way, just normally. Just like a man who doesn't want another human to lose skin to the cold because it's pointless and stupid and avoidable. That kind of normalcy is quiet. It doesn't ask for applause. It doesn't even ask to be remembered, which is exactly why it has power. He thinks about the word restraint. He hasn't respected it before. In his old world, restraint looked like weakness. In his old world, power was proven by pressure, by dominance, by making sure the other person felt it. But in that dark moment, the American had the power and didn't perform it. That's what keeps coming back. The hand could have stayed. It didn't. The voice could have mocked. It didn't. The moment could have been used to claim something. It wasn't. It was used to prevent frostbite. And then it was released. That's a different kind of power. Not loud, not theatrical. Power that can afford to be calm. And that calm does something dangerous inside a prisoner. It makes him question what he was told. He was told the enemy would always take, always humiliate, always press until you broke. He was told captivity meant constant violation of body and dignity. He was told that any kindness was bait, any softness was a trick. But what he experienced doesn't fit cleanly into those sentences. It doesn't erase the war. It doesn't erase loss or bitterness. It doesn't turn Americans into saints. It just forces one simple admission. The story was incomplete. And an incomplete story, repeated long enough, becomes a lie. He doesn't say this to anyone, not yet. In a camp, truths are traded carefully. Some men need their hatred the way they need warmth. Take it away too fast and they collapse. He understands that now, too. He understands that his bunkmate's cynicism might be the only thing keeping him upright. So he keeps his own new truth close, like a match in a pocket. But he uses it. He uses it the next time his mind tries to run ahead. The next time a guard steps close, he doesn't immediately assume harm. He watches the hands. He listens for the tone. He waits for the facts to arrive before he writes the story. Sometimes the facts are still unpleasant. A camp is still a camp. Orders are still orders. You are still not free. But sometimes, just sometimes, the facts are simply human. And those small human facts begin to rearrange him. If your enemy saves you from the cold, what happens to the story you were told about him? Does it crumble all at once, or does it fracture slowly, piece by piece, every time reality refuses to match the slogan? And what would you do with that new truth? Hide it, or let it change you? Because letting it change you isn't comfortable. It means admitting you were shaped by something that wasn't fully true. It means facing your own reflexes. It means losing the clean comfort of hatred. The prisoner doesn't become a new man overnight. He doesn't start giving speeches about peace. He doesn't suddenly trust the fence or the uniforms outside it. His pride doesn't dissolve. His suspicion doesn't vanish. But one thing becomes permanent. He keeps the scarf tight from that day on. Not because he's afraid of the American soldier, because he finally understands what that hand was really doing.